I feel like there's a lot of discourse about, sure, AI is smart, but it's not human. Haha, it'll never replace your humanity. And when it comes down to what humanity means, I don't know what it is. It's like, it's not creative. And it's like, well, I don't know. I saw the videos that Google's AI was making yesterday. It's pretty creative. It looks pretty good. To me, like, I can understand that people generally are a bit dismissive about what they can't see yet. At the same time, I think people also probably have a bit of latent anxiety about what it might mean for their career, or for, I don't want it to take my job, so I'm not going to like this.
Welcome to Get Discovered, a podcast about AI, SEO, and online discoverability. In the first season of the podcast, we're focused on simplifying AI. We're taking a step back and trying to discover how people are using it, what AI really is, and making it easier to understand for you and your business. Today, we're speaking with Britton Upchurch, founder of Perci.ai. Britton is building powerful AI-led tools for Amazon listings, helping marketeers work smarter and more efficiently. We're excited to hear more about his journey and his expertise in the AI space. Welcome to the show, Britton.
Well, my name is Britton. I run a startup called Percy, which is an Amazon e-commerce AI tool, and you might call it an AI agent pretty soon. That's a word that's starting to come into the world, which has its own meanings. But basically, it's a tool that will take your Amazon catalog and optimize it automatically using AI. I used to be a copywriter, so I was a
Interesting.
professional advertising copywriter. I worked at ad agencies for like 8 years, and one of my first creative directors, I don't think he knows this. His name is David Baldwin, and we were sitting there celebrating this big award that we had just won. And he said something like, "Oh, in 10 years, AI is going to be doing all this, and we're going to be out of business." And I literally remember going home and Googling AI writing ? Something like that. And there was this really big paper that had just come out about LLMs. They were actually recurrent neural networks at the time, called The Unreasonable Effectiveness of RNNs by Karpathy, who's a big guy. Anyway, that was this real big moment in text generation, and I just happened to stumble upon it, and I got really interested in it. And so I started learning about it and teaching myself code, and started training at that time what were the first little AI models you could train on your own computer, and it led from there. And so eventually I built this business. There were a lot of intermediate steps, but eventually I was building this tool that would generate and optimize Amazon listings, and I quit advertising and I started doing this full time, and it's been lots of fun.
Nice. So you didn't have any technical background before you started to dive into this. Is that right? You were just pure copywriting?
That's true.
Nice.
That's true.
Okay.
I remember, I would say the depth of the technical background. I used to be a creative recruiter before I was ever even in advertising. And I used to recruit a lot of devs, front-end devs,
Okay.
back-end devs. And because I was a recruiter, I saw how much money those guys made. And I
Yep.
think I was in my 20s in New York, and I got on Code Academy, and I was like, I'm going to be a dev. I
Yep.
failed miserably at that. That was really hard. But once I had the idea and sort of a goal in mind, I came back to code. And when I had an actual purpose, then suddenly it was a lot more fun and rewarding to learn things like Python and
Yeah.
Django and Flask and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I had a similar trajectory. So my background, at least in education, is in rhetoric with a focus on public discourse. So it's absolutely nothing to do with tech. But I was living in the Bay Area back in 2008, 2009, and I saw these people around me who didn't seem particularly bright, making lots of money in tech. And I thought, well, I'm kind of like reasonably smart too. So I want to get into that industry. I didn't actually like start my journey in terms of writing code until some years after I'd been working as a business analyst and kind of doing more things in tech companies. But it was really transformational. I think empowering to be able to have that talent for yourself. You, of course, have done a lot more with it than I have. I'm just sort of in the management layer now, but yeah, that's cool. That's a nice story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to me what you can learn online if you really want to.
True. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important too to have a real concrete objective. Like it's one thing for and you hear this from a lot of people nowadays is this like strategic imperative to learn how to code in this very kind of amorphous way. Of, so, okay, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to build a chess game from scratch, or are you going to like do some kind of web app for, I don't know, tracking your workouts or whatever? It's really important, I think, and I'm guessing you would probably agree to have a very concrete objective for yourself and a reason, like a motivation behind doing it, so you can feel really vested in it.
I agree with that. I mean, that was at least my experience, and you hear that advice echoed a lot online. Where when I was just wanting to learn to code, really it was just to make money and to not do my current job. That was really hard to do, and I never there was just no reason to learn it. But once I was doing it for a different reason to learn to make lots of money, then that's not true. Once I had a goal, like I had something tangible I wanted to make, then suddenly, well, honestly, what really, and you'll probably, this is off track a bit, but when you just it's when people say learn to code, it's like, what language do you want to learn? What are you even trying to do? Is this back end, front end? And so you just get lost in the sauce right away. You're just
Yeah,
turning around yourself in circles. But when you have an idea of, I want to build an app that does XYZ, suddenly it it narrows your options down to things that are practical and mean something. It's like, oh, you have to learn Python if you want to use AI, or you need to build a front end, so you need to learn, I don't know, React or whatever it is.
yeah,
Uh, so yeah, it just gives you a direction to walk in.
yeah. So, you talked about kind of like your tech journey here, and like where in the world are you living right now? And can you tell us a little bit about how you've moved around and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm originally from Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am currently, but I'm only here temporarily. I was in New York for a while. I then moved to Australia for about 6 years, and I left there in maybe 2023. Came to back to the U.S. for about a year, and then I most recently have been bopping around Europe. I've been in Portugal for the past few months, and I've just this is very confusing, but I've just popped back to North Carolina to do a visa requirement, and then in a few days I'll be back in Europe again.
Nice. Any particular reason for being so nomadic? Are you following work or just I don't know, a wandering spirit?
I mean, it's fun to travel. It's fun to explore and learn about new places. I was in New York because I was a jazz musician and I wanted to follow my dreams of being a jazz drummer. Um, I then met an Australian girl who
Mm,
didn't want to stay in the U.S. She wanted to get back to Australia, so I went to Australia with her, and we were there for 6 years, and then we split up, and so I stayed long enough to get citizenship in Australia, but it's very far away from everything
yeah,
over there, as amazing as Melbourne is. Um, so I thought, well, I'm going to try the U.S. again. But by the time I left Australia, I was doing Percy full time, and the nice thing there is, and I think everyone's starting to have a bit of this freedom, but when you just work on a laptop, it really just does not matter where you are.
yeah,
So you could just do whatever you want. You don't have to stay in one place. I think that brings its own host of personal challenges,
sure.
uh, but yeah, I guess I'm sort of feeling out the walls of that new situation.
Yeah. Cool. So switching gears a
Yeah.
little bit. So like I mentioned before, like the idea with our little series here is to first and foremost talk about what AI means. And I think to a certain extent, if you were to go out on the street and ask five people to define AI, you would probably get like six or seven different answers, right? It's kind of this amorphous blob, and it seems to really kind of shape shift depending on who you ask. But I want to pose the question to you first. So, if someone asked you to define AI in, let's say, two sentences, what would you say?
It's computers that think.
Easy enough.
That's what it is. I think the longer answer is, it's anything that feels magical to us in this moment.
Okay. Interesting. So, I want to dive a little bit more into the computers that think thing. Um, Like I think a lot of times, at least what I see, is people and even competitors in our industry and elsewhere in SaaS talk about AI. They're kind of like putting AI lipstick on everything nowadays. But when you actually look at the outputs from it, it's really just like a more sophisticated series of logical steps that any smart programmer can just kind of put together. It's not necessary that it needs to be per se computers thinking. You kind of get where I'm going with that, like the idea that we talk about things being AI because it has this appearance of quote unquote thinking to us,
Mm,
but on the back, it's not actually doing anything really consistent with something more than just having a series of decision gates and kind of pushing actions through those. It's not like there's
yeah,
actual thought going on behind the scenes. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it
So
does
how
feel
do
like it can
you?
be a helpful shorthand for a lot of stuff like that, even if it's not
Yeah.
necessarily true.
Yeah. Do you see that a lot? Like, do you see people saying, "Okay, we have AI," but then when you actually kind of look at what it's doing, it's really not that sophisticated a use case?
I feel like I've seen that in the last few years. It's hard to say. I mean, when it's this is sort of the thing with AI is someone can say it's AI, and then for all you know, they really are throwing massive. They could be throwing the most sophisticated AI in the world at it, and then the AI is just like, well, this is very easy, and it's maybe really they are using sophisticated technology to do a dumb thing. Who knows?
Mhm.
But more often, what I seem to hear about is people who say AI, and then it's actually a person in the back.
Mhm.
So it's a Wizard of Oz thing where you lift the curtain and there's some VA in the
Yep.
Philippines or something who's really doing it.
Yeah.
But I mean, even that stuff's kind of valid because if you're the customer, like I don't really care how you're doing whatever it is you're doing. Are you solving the problem or not? And if you are, great.
Yeah. Do you remember, I think it was Expensify, they came out with, gosh, it was like 6 or 7 years ago, the automated receipt scanning. Do you remember that?
Not specifically, although
Okay.
this is familiar. So keep going.
Yeah. So it's very much like what you were talking about. So the idea was we have this really sophisticated AI that's doing receipt scanning, and it will automatically, see with OCR, optical character recognition, like what you bought and how much tax you paid, and will suggest categories for the different expenses based on what's in the receipt. And everyone was so amazed, and they started charging people for this and whatever. And then a couple of years after that, it came out that it was basically just a bunch of lowly paid resources in the Philippines and India that were actually doing the OCR, which at that point it's not actually OCR; it's just humans reading receipts and categorizing things
Yeah.
and whatever. But from a marketing perspective, they were saying, "No, no, no, no! This is AI, and this is what we're doing now, and everyone should be really impressed." And the same thing actually happened with Amazon. I don't know if you remember the Go stores, I think they were called, where it was this great thing. You could just walk in, put stuff in your cart, and walk out, and everything was supposed to be computerized. But behind the
Uh huh.
scenes, it was teams of engineers in India that were actually fastidiously watching every camera feed and individually following people around in the store to make sure that they had everything that was put in the carts. It was this hugely manual process behind the scenes, and it had absolutely nothing to do with technology apart from just having a camera feed for every part of the store.
Oh, that's so funny. I mean, I do think at least this may not be true going forward just because AI's gotten so good at zero shotting this stuff, but I feel like a lot of times those cases are they're saying it's AI and they are intending that it's going to be AI, but they have to build the data set first to actually
Hmm.
run the AI. So if it's Amazon, they need to get enough of a data set of watch someone walk in the store, follow them around, see when they leave, see what they picked up. But then their hope is in 2 years when we've done this for 2 million people, we'll then be able to execute this with a machine instead. Um, I I feel like this is actually the way it seems now is when people say AI has gotten so diluted as a gimmick that if
Hmm.
someone says, "Oh, we're doing with AI," everyone's like, "I don't care." It's just not a compelling. It's not a compelling way to get someone interested in whatever it is you're doing anymore, which I think is actually pretty healthy because ultimately it really isn't. It's important. It's what problem are you solving or what are you doing with it. Um,
Sure.
you do still see it. I mean, there's certainly tons of e-commerce tools that just say it's AI, and I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. The epidemic of AI lipstick. I guess is, what we
Mm.
could say that describe it as. So, we talk about this. So your kind of working definition of AI is computers that think. You had something like a second kind of version of that. Can you remind me what that was?
Well, it's anything. I mean, I think it's anything that feels magical to people, and
Ah, yeah. Okay, the
the
magic.
longer explanation is it's a moving target.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's getting a little more concrete now, but case in point, when they were teaching computers to play chess 20 years ago, that was called non-ironically AI, even though it's exactly what you were describing. It's a bunch of decision gates, very complicated
Hmm.
decision gates, but it's just an if then.
Yeah.
Um, so AI, I mean, you could. I think some people say, oh, it's when it can think like a person, or when it thinks as well as I do, or as an average person. I think that's not quite correct in the sense that it'll never think like a person, and even it'll never think like a person even once it's thinking way smarter than you or I am. So, uh, yeah, I think AI. That's why it's so tricky when why you get 10 answers if you ask two people is because really it's just we're talking about computing.
Yeah.
Like it's been AI from the start in a certain definition of it. Um, So now that we use these deep neural nets to make these crazy stacks of billions of computations in half a second, and then say, is it a hot dog or not a hot dog? That's AI,
Hmm.
and it feels a little bit more magically. I think maybe one way to think of it is it when you can put text into a, a box and ask a question about does this image have a motorcycle in it or whatever, that feels like something where I can't imagine how a circuit does that.
Hmm.
How did you, oh, that feels like it's like a human type interaction that you've just given me. Whereas when you just click a button and it takes me to the next page of a web page, that feels like a very just that's a circuit. That's just an electronic thing that happens. There's nothing smart about that. Whereas suddenly it feels like, oh, this is smart. Um, so maybe that's I'm just wheeling back on myself, but maybe that's a good definition of AI at the moment. Is it feels smarter than just I can see the decisions that happened here, or I can
Yeah.
see the thing that happened.
Yeah. Would it be a leap to say that it's like a computer that when you interact with it, it feels human?
That's the Turing test. Um, and that's sort of the first test we ever had. So if people listening, I don't know who our audience is. If we're talking to business professionals or just random people on the street, the Turing test was Alan Turing's famous thought experiment where, and there were some. He never defined it, but basically you have to interact with a machine for about 2 hours, and you have to tell at the end whether you think it's a machine or a person. And he said once we pass that, then we've got AI by Turing's estimation.
Definition.
Um,
Yeah.
we've long passed that by most of the definitions of that. So yeah, in that sense, yeah, AI's here. We've passed the Turing test. It's in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Interesting. And now, okay, so you have Percy. Do you want to spend maybe just a minute or two just kind of describing that and your journey and what you do for your different customers?
Yeah. So Percy is an Amazon listing generator and optimizer. It originally started where we just took some product information you had and we would write an Amazon listing. So it's an Amazon title, it's Amazon bullets, and an Amazon product description field. Those have some rules associated with them. There's formatting and compliance things that you have to do. There's also SEO keywords optimization that you need to do in an Amazon listing. And so basically Percy is trying to do all that stuff for you automatically. So Amazon listings are a real pain in the butt. They take a long time to write and to check, and it'll automate all of it. So it finds the keywords for you. It goes to various data sources to get keyword metrics, and then it uses AI to filter the keywords to so that you're only using the right ones. Um, and then it writes the final copy. So that could be updating your existing copy or giving you new copy for an Amazon listing. And probably from an AI standpoint, I think a lot of people are used to and expect text generation.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone says, "Oh, yeah, this thing writes an Amazon title," and I can sort of see how it makes sure that the length is right, and maybe they've programmed in some kind of a hard code check to make sure it's within a certain length of characters or something. But what we probably do more of than even just text generation is the decisions that you have to make along the way of, let's take keywords for instance. This is probably half of the work that we automate for people is keyword research. You have to go get the keywords, so you have to decide what root keyword to search. You also have to go on Amazon and find competitor ASINs to search. This is very Amazon specific, but with Amazon, when you do keyword research, you can actually pull the keywords off of your top competitors' listings. You can see what they sell in each keyword, so you can get a bunch of raw keywords from those. So we use AI to figure out which of the competitors should we use in our research. So that's an AI decision. And then we take those keyword lists and we say, hey, here's all the information about the product. Go look in this list, see what other brands are here. AI does that. See what other misspelled words are here. See which words are in foreign languages. AI does that. The misspelled words in foreign languages, there's no hard code that you could write that would do that in a reliable way, nor brands. So that's a very small piece of the process that we do, but there's this whole chain of decisions that we're making AI do that now every time that shaves about 5 minutes, every step that might take 5-10 minutes off of someone would have to do that themselves. But now that can happen in about half a second with AI. So we take all the brands out, we take all the misspelled words out, and we take all the product information and we say, hey, AI, this is all everything you know about the product. Which keyword shouldn't be in this list? And if it says, pink bicycle helmet is the keyword, but we know the bicycle helmet's red, it'll
Mm-hmm.
strike that out. So there's a lot of when people say, "Oh, AI writes," I think a lot of what the value is, at least for now, is it can be a decision engine for just about anything that involves information you need to get processed from a beginning state to an end state.
Yeah, it makes sense. What if we were to kind of like dive into some kind of like ethical considerations of this? So, obviously, be a little bit biased because you kind of run a company that's kind of steeped in doing these things. But do you have any things that kind of run through your mind, or does your team have kind of like an ethical framework that you like to think about as you're enhancing Percy or talking about what your marketing looks like, or how you're trying to sell to customers, or maybe considering the future of what things would look like in a couple of years?
I feel like ethics with AI can mean a lot of different things. There's long-term AI risks. There's short-term benefits or drawbacks to society. Do you sort of have a way that you mean ethics with AI?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I guess like my primary kind of motivation for thinking about that question is the long-term impact on society and people working and access to information, different things like that. And where I'm coming from is the idea that what we're doing with AI is really starting to increase in terms of scale to the extent that I think less and less as the days go by, do actual humans have the opportunity to really review what's being written or done with AI? So, my thinking is in the next 3 to 5 years, AI will be doing and creating so many different things, it'll be pretty much impossible for humans to actually be in the loop anymore. And so, how do we kind of make sure that things are still going in the right direction and we're not doing something like kind of sleepwalking into a future where we're surrounded by misinformation and things that are really not living up to expectations or kind of going in the direction that we feel like we want them to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, um, it's a big it's a big topic. Alignment is the word for that. So when you're on the Twitterverse or reading papers, alignment's the shorthand for, do we trust that the AI models are actually doing what we want in our best interest? Have we trained them well, or are they deceiving us, or somehow that's, well, I should back up. Alignment is one potential issue. I think the other thing that maybe you're talking about is we won't really, there'll be so much information, so much stuff that we won't really have our hands on the reins anymore. Um, it floods the zone with just crap.
Yeah.
There's everything is AI generated. We don't even know it's real anymore. Um, I think you could probably say that now, and you almost could have said that before AI came around at all. People were still complaining about, oh, there's Russian bots and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I feel like your original question was sort of in the context of my own business. Um, Percy is a business tool that people use to automate the work that they need to do, and in some cases allows them to do a scale of work that wasn't possible before. So with Percy, one person can now optimize 1,000 Amazon listings in 2 hours. They could not have done that in 2 months before. So
Yeah.
it can unlock stuff. It's not really doing anything in Percy's case. It's not doing anything that's any different than people would have done before. It just lets them do it cheaper and faster. And probably as far as e-commerce generally goes, people used to complain a lot of just about how ugly and poorly written Amazon listings were. So I think everyone's probably happier to see Amazon listings that make sense. At least it's not just
Hmm.
shelf, black shelf, brown shelf, pop-up shelf, installation, easy shelf. Like, it's actually a sentence up there. Great. I do think the alignment question more broadly is, when people talk about those kinds of risks with AI, I think what they really mean are when models, and this is going to happen like very soon, um, models are getting better and better, and there's going to be a takeoff, an intelligence takeoff. So that means we are basically always, we are, you and I have the same hardware and software that humans had 250,000 years ago. So flashback 250,000 years, you and I were sitting on the shore of, I don't know, Western Europe somewhere, wearing loincloths, eating ant hills and antelope meat. We're not getting any smarter. Meanwhile, AI 4 years ago was the intelligence of a second grader. Last year, it was a high schooler. Now it's basically a PhD level at anything you ask it. And it's like, poof, we're about to go full vertical. Um, it's a really interesting question, and there's so many amazing, very smart people. There's papers about this stuff, about what that means in terms of, do we know that AI is doing what we want or what it's telling us to do? Is there some kind of a weird um, Skynet thing where we've lost control? As far as my own business, to get back to your original question, Percy uses the current state of the art LLMs to do work. So um, to maybe a good metaphor is, there's this like idea of fundamental research versus commercialization. So Percy doesn't do any fundamental research. I'm not out there discovering new AI algorithms that will make a more efficient model. I'm not making AI any smarter. And when Percy runs, the general state of AI does not change. We're just using the models that are already around. We're doing inference. Um,
Hmm.
whereas it's the open AIs, it's the Anthropics and the DeepSeeks that are actually making new algorithms. They're developing new models and trying to make them smarter. Granted, I want them to. The smarter that those models get and the cheaper they are to run, the better that I can help people do Amazon listings. Um, what Percy does is a very small part of a very large process. You might could say the even the open AIs and the Anthropics of the world, they're kind of on the outside of this. The fundamental research is um, the researchers who write papers about AI algorithms and AI variables that you can tweak. The attention is all you need is no one, I mean, people outside of AI don't know this. That was the transformer paper. It came out from Google. They
Yeah.
took them a lot to make money off it, but that was a group of, I don't know, 5 or 6 people who developed this transformer architecture and said, wow, this could actually be a much better way to encode and generate information. That's 10 years old now. And
Oh,
that's
wow. Yeah. I
fundamental
forgot it's
research.
so old. Yeah.
So that's the oil well. That's the actual oil coming out of the ground.
Mhm.
That's like where that's really deep. And then there's this concentric circle of businesses and things that use that oil to do whatever. So then if you have an oil field, there's the oil coming out of the ground, but then there's like a mining company that that uses that oil. So that's OpenAI and Anthropic. And then on the outside of that is like, I don't know, shoe companies and bars that serve the miners that work there. So that's me or other. Sometimes they call it the app layer.
Mhm.
I'm really mixing metaphors up now. Um, so there's just this sort of outward concentric circles of people who use that in different ways. So if I'm the shoe store on the outside that puts the shoes on the miners, I don't help get the oil out of the ground at all, but I'm making money off of it. I'm helping people do something. Um, OpenAI and Anthropic are doing their own fundamental research. In turn, Percy, as the app layer, uses the models they build to then go out and do things that those models can't do otherwise.
Sure.
It's a very long, convoluted answer. Sorry.
So ethics, kind of like getting back to the
Oh yeah,
question, like, um, I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of what I'm picking up here is, to use your oil metaphor, right? So we have that transformer research that was done a decade ago. It's hard to believe it was that long ago, but
yep,
I guess that is the case, right? So that's really at the heart of kind of discovering the fact that oil exists, right? And then from
yep.
there, we're
Oil
going further
blowing out of the
into,
ground.
yeah. But now we're going further into the activity of finding it and extracting it the right way and all of that kind of stuff. And you're much further down the value chain in terms of Percy. And then when we talk about like ethical considerations with that, it's maybe not as crucial a topic for you to kind of think about because you're not the one that's doing the refining and kind of bringing the oil into the ecosystem and driving these kind of mass scale adoptions and changes and shifts to not just an industry but society as a whole. Like you're very focused on a particular aspect of how people list things on Amazon, making sure that you can be or Percy as a technology can really be a force multiplier to them. And it's maybe not the same kind of discussion around ethics and how this goes, forward in the future and so on and so forth, because of the fact that you're kind of in that part of the value chain. Is that maybe a fair summary?
I I think so. Yeah, I think when people talk about, oh, AI is going to take over, it's evil. I don't feel like what Percy does is really part of that discussion. If people talk about AI is bad because people might lose jobs, I think you can point the gun at me for that.
Yeah.
Um, we can
Okay.
talk about whether that's really true, but yeah, when people talk about ethics of AI, there's often a lot of different things they might mean.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast about a month ago on this topic of AI replacing people's jobs. And the host was talking about a really interesting parallel that I actually think this is perfectly valid. Um, what we're looking at right now in terms of people being resistant to adopting AI and concerned about what it will do to displace people in the workplace is very similar to what we saw in the 70s, 80s, and 90s around manufacturing and the concern that some of these blue collar jobs would go away because we were automating so many of the assembly lines of factories and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a white collar knowledge worker version of the same thing. And I really like that. I think in some ways it makes sense, and there will definitely be a need for people to adapt to this new reality. But on the other hand, and I'm actually kind of curious about your thoughts of this, I think a lot of times, if we're really purposeful with how we leverage AI as a technology, no matter if that's, doing something directly with ChatGPT or using a tool like Percy, uh, it gives us actually the opportunity to think about focusing our efforts as humans on things that technology can't do or can't do the same way that we could, can't do it as well as we can. And I think on balance, a lot of that is focused around creativity. And so if we talk about AI defined as machines that can think, do you feel like there's a distinction between machines that can think and machines that can create?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, when you when you go to an AI model now, if you ask ChatGPT, "Hey, tell me, I have this problem. Help me talk through it," or you ask it for recommendations about um, what kind of exercises should I do in the gym, it can give you
Hmm.
information. It has no agency when it's doing that. So it's a it's an information cloud with fuzzy search that's predicting next words that seem likely based on the preceding statements,
Right.
and it gives it to you. It has no there's to there's no soul, there's no consciousness, so to speak. There are people who say, oh, anything that acts like it's conscious we should assume is conscious.
Mm.
Fair. um,
Yeah.
but generally, I mean, we know what's going on under the hood. We know it's literally just the next word predictor. It's learned to say things that are human like because it's learned on human text, so it
Right.
seems human to us because it's done a really good job at that. I do think we are so we're now in the world of agents. This is the sort of current place that AI is moving into. Like, intelligence is creeping up a little bit, but it's already smart enough that you can start to do agents. And agents are basically AIs that have a mission.
Hmm.
So they have some kind of a thing they're trying to do, and they might have the ability to use certain software tools. They can go search the web, whatever. They can use, I don't know, Expedia to book flights. So now there might be AI agents that have someone said, "Hey, can you book me a flight to Denver on Friday?" And then suddenly Expedia is like, "What is this? There's AIs that are crawling our site and booking stuff."
Hmm.
So that's an interesting change where now AI is not just a question answer tool. It can now sort of have purposes and goals that it's trying to do. Um, I think that's where things get really interesting in terms of, suddenly there's someone's like, if you encounter an AI agent, say it calls you and then it uses AI to start asking you questions like, how do you treat this AI? Is it a person? I don't know. Um, but yeah, I forget the original question you had, but the ethics of it get pretty funky.
Yeah. So the question was, so your kind of working definition of AI was machines that can think, right? And so I'm trying to maybe draw a little bit of a distinction really in the context of people talking about AI replacing people at work and the idea that
That's right.
rather than seeing AI as a technology that displaces people, it's actually should be seen as a force multiplier. I think you referenced that pretty well in the context of Percy, right? As you were talking about like I think you said 1,000. Like Percy can allow one person to update, improve, whatever the kind of adjective is, um, or the verb is, 1,000 Amazon listings in 2 hours instead of 2 months, right? Or maybe it would have even
Yeah.
taken longer, right? So it's a real force multiplier. And what I'm talking about is the idea that, yes, okay, in some ways we could see this as a technology that will really replace people, but I also think that we should start looking at it a little bit differently. And in that context of being a force multiplier, letting this technology, be it Percy or anything else that can quote unquote think, um, take care of things that it can do well, arguably better than humans because it's just like the sheer amount of data that it can marshal and the speed of processing, all that kind of stuff is something like we're like biomechanically limited to be able to do. right? Our brains are the same as they've been for the most part, to your point, for 250,000 years or maybe even longer. So we're not going to develop significant improvements to our processing speed or our ability to marshal certain amounts of information, whatever. But that leaves space for humans in the context of this machine plus human kind of framework to focus more on things that machines can't do. And from my perspective, and what I'm interested in your kind of perspective on as well, is if that is maybe creativity. So is it the case that machines can think, but machines cannot create the same way that humans can? Does that make sense?
Yes. I fundamentally, I don't really think, I don't agree. I think machines can be as, I think of, AI theoretically can be as creative as people can be. I think there is a lot of, this is where conversations like this get, they can be kind of dark, but um, I see developers, for instance, who are like, AI, that like AI comes up and some developer will take their headphones off and go like, "Hey, everyone thinks AI is gonna replace coders. The AI is so dumb. I saw AI do something dumb the other day." Sure, um, I think AI right now often doesn't seem very creative because it only does what you ask it.
Mhm.
But I don't really see any reason why a neural network can't, give it access to tools. Like if you put it in a uh, one of those humanoid robots, like it would start to do stuff, I guess. But I don't see anything conceptually that makes me think that AI can't have its own ideas and can't execute on those. I don't think it does that yet.
Mhm.
But I guess the context of my answer is I feel like there's a lot of currently, um, there's a lot of discourse about, well, sure, AI is smart, but it's not human. Haha, we like it'll never replace your humanity. And when it comes down to what humanity means, I don't really know what that. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's like it's not creative, and it's like, well, I don't know. I saw the videos that Google's AI was making yesterday. It's pretty creative. It looks pretty good. So I guess to me, like I can understand that people generally are a bit dismissive about what they can't see yet.
Mhm.
So people say, "Oh, self-driving will never happen." I saw a self-driving car that on the news that hit someone in the U.S. yesterday or something. It's never going to work. If you and at the same time, I think people also probably have a bit of latent anxiety about what it might mean for their career or for oh my is I don't want it to take my job, so I'm not going to like this. Um, I do think that long term, like even maybe 10, 15 years, that thing of AI is not going to take your job, a person using AI is going to take your job. I think that's true. And then
Yeah.
AI is going to take that person's job. So I think when people, it's a force multiplier. I do agree with you. I do think it's disingenuous if people try and assuage AI fears by saying it's going to make you more powerful, because that glosses over the fact that like the minute that AI will let a business person not hire someone to do it, they will.
Yeah.
Um, because if they don't, someone else is going to do it, and then they won't have any customers anyway. Um,
Right.
so I think it's all true. It's just a matter of what timeline you're looking at. Like
Yeah.
right now, it makes everyone more effective and more productive at the job.
Yeah, so I like one of our this is still a new podcast, but the wrap up question is around resources or information that you might recommend to someone who wants to learn a little bit more about AI. Maybe it's because they're worried about it replacing their job, or maybe it's just because they're curious. So what are some blogs or speakers or YouTube channels or anything like that you might recommend?
The first thing I would say is don't get a pop sci book from the airport that tells you how to use AI for your job. I don't think, I don't know, don't do it.
Mm,
Don't read the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal when they write articles about AI because they never seem to understand how it works either. The first place I would steer people is there's a he's like a patron saint of AI people. His name is Andrew Ng.
Oh yeah, of
NG.
course. Yeah.
Andrew NG.
Yeah.
He was one of the co-founders of Coursera a long time ago. He is a really great teacher, and one of the first things that I did when I got into AI was I went through one of his beginner AI courses, and he breaks down the real nuts and bolts of machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, this isn't even having to do with neural networks. This is more fundamental than all of that. Gradient descent. What is that? How does that work? If you're interested in getting a sense of what really happens under the hood when I type something into ChatGPT, he'll start to give you a sense of it. Another person I would recommend is a guy named Jeremy Howard. He's an Australian. He lived in the US for a while. I also got a lot from his courses. He taught these courses based around a software he created called Fast.ai, but he does a really good job at explaining AI for normies like you and me so that we can understand it. And he really demystifies a lot of what's really going on in there. Like, there is a lot of academic big wordism that goes on in AI where people try and kind of gatekeep what's really happening, and he just puts it in the plainest English you could imagine. If you're interested, I would say Andrew Ng and Jeremy Howard, if you're interested in learning how AI works, what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
For all the philosophical stuff about what does this mean ethically for us going forward, there's a few that I'd point to. Dario Amodei, the Anthropic CEO, wrote an essay probably about 6 months ago called Machines of Loving Grace. In that essay, he's laying, and granted, he's the CEO of Anthropic, so he has a nice view of this stuff. But I think he's a pretty realistic person. He lays out the optimistic case. A lot of people, it's easy for us to imagine bad things, Terminator, Skynet kind of stuff, and he's trying to represent, hey, we are worried about that too, but we should also talk about the potential benefits. So Machines of the Living Grace is a paper where he describes what he thinks are the realistic outcomes of superintelligence. What could that do for healthcare, politics, whatever, you name it. There are some other interesting ones. There's one, I think it's called AI 2027. That's, if I might be mixing these two up, there's a few big ones that came out in the last few years that basically try and lay out for policymakers and the public at large, like what AI might mean in terms of, we have both a great power conflict with the US and China at the same time as we have this like weird AI intelligence takeoff that we really should be doing very intentionally, and what are the bad incentives there and how might that play out. If someone's interested in what AI is really going to look like going forward, I would recommend looking up AI 2027. Generally, I think when I talk to people, they don't, I don't think that the general public really is aware of what might be coming in the next 10 years. And it's going to be wacky.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a big shock to the system for sure.
Yeah. So far, I think it's going well. Like, I think people are sort of taking well to, this is, my mom's on Perplexity now. She finds it useful. It helps her out. Good on you, Mom.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, from here on, I think things get pretty strange.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, cool, Britton. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
And for sharing some resources and thoughts. Definitely a much larger conversation that society needs to have. But I think we'll all kind of play our part in driving that forward. So appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Oh, very happy to join. Thanks for having me. It's been fun chatting.
Of course.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Discovered, a podcast where AI, SEO, and the future of online visibility collide. For more about us, swing by Prerender.io. We make sure your site isn't hiding from Google, Bing, or the next-gen AI bots sniffing around for fresh content. I'm Joe Walsh. See you next time.